Welcome back to the Jesus Collective. We're doing Jesus Get Disciplined, which is number 16 on the website. We're coming to you from not so sunny Cronulla. It's a beautiful autumn evening and I wish you could be here. It's just absolutely gorgeous. The team, get disciplined. A few little thoughts before we get into the topic. We're going to consider questions such as, did Jesus ever show any evidence of discipline? We're going to think about ways to do discipline. We're going to think about when to do discipline, start early, go late, and whatever else comes up in the discussion. So, Cal, we might start with you. We're going to think about Jesus and discipline. Do you think that, is there any evidence in Scripture that there was Jesus evidenced discipline, or was he just sort of doing it all so easy?
Well, I'm glad you asked me first, because I get the easy one there. I reckon, like, the Garden of Gethsemane, obviously, Father, if it's all possible, take this cup from me. But not my will, but yours be done. I mean, if that's a classic example, actually, of self-discipline, which is everything in me, if there's any way, everything in me wants not to do this thing, but not my will, but yours be done. So I think that's the essence of what we're talking about, and that's a classic.
Okay, so one evidence would be Gethsemane. Anthony, Jesus and discipline. Any evidence?
Yeah, well, Jesus regularly wanted to speak to his Father, and in a sense that was solitude as well. He would go up to the mountain, connect with God on a regular basis. So in a sense he was getting away from people just to be able to connect, not hear the voices of other people all the time. So he could hear the voices of his Father. And
discipline of solitude.
So solitude, but also the discipline of actually getting up early. It says that he got up early, and which a tough one for me. But for him, that's a discipline where he would get up early. It was like when no one was around, when he couldn't be bothered by other people, and he would speak to the Father, which was a habit that he had, which was a good thing for him.
Okay. Yeah. I was thinking also of the desert. Put a few days in not eating, something like 40.
Yeah.
I think it'd be hard to argue that he didn't put in a bit of discipline.
He was, and he was hungry.
And he was hungry.
The biggest understatement in the Bible.
Yeah. So even though he's the Son of God and the Son of Man, fully God and fully man, discipline was not absent in his life, and he felt it obviously necessary to do these things. So I guess on that basis alone, it's hard for us to argue that, God's inside us, and by the Holy Spirit, it's all grace, it's all good, and now magic happens as time goes by, and suddenly I'm just more godly in 5 years than I was now. I do no effort whatsoever. It kind of makes a mockery of, why did Jesus do these things if it was not necessary, given that he was full of the Holy Spirit without measure? So if good enough for the Son of God, good enough for us? Yeah.
Well, more so. More so for us.
Yes.
With our wanting to live in the flesh and to try to, we're a new creation, but there is still parts of our flesh that want to act out. We want to get comfortable. We want to have the desires that we have fulfilled. We want it right now. We live in a fairly instant kind of world where it can be so easy to get what we want right now. And so, we more so do we need discipline.
That puts me in mind of Paul when he was vacillating. I think it's Romans 7. He's sort of saying, I know what I want to do, but there's part of me that doesn't want to do it, and there's this inward fight going on, and do I walk after the Spirit? Do I walk after the flesh? Romans 8. And there's a choice. The good thing is, I guess, once you're saved and there's that new part, that new creation starting within, that we now have choice, whereas before that we had flesh, nothing else, We were a slave to do whatever the flesh wanted.
There wasn't a battle going on then, was there?
But now we need discipline to work to stay away from flesh and stay in the spirit. Okay, so why don't we talk a little bit about the spiritual disciplines? I guess there's things we could do more of, which would be classed as spiritual discipline. There'd be things we could do less of and hold back from, which could be classed as spiritual disciplines. So, Cal, were you thinking more of some things, less of other things? What sort of things would you classify maybe as spiritual disciplines?
I mean, I'm picking all the easy ones now. I'm glad you keep coming in first, but I mean, fasting's obviously one. I think that
Less food.
yeah, and look, I haven't fasted a lot of recent times. I did do a lot of fasting at one stage, or a few different stages in my life, and I found that it was not only control about food, it was actually more, for me, the discipline of fasting was a couple of things. One was saying, God, I want you, and you are more important to me than anything else. And the other thing that came out of it was also, there was a self-control that came out of it, generally speaking, that I was able to say no to myself. So it was self-control as well. So yeah, it wasn't just about food, like directly combating gluttony, for example. It was about submitting myself up to God. It was kind of not my will but yours be done kind of thing.
It's fascinating that in Matthew 5 and 6, Jesus is quoted as saying, "And when you fast."
Yeah, true.
Why not if we fast? And when you fast. So it's a fascinating thing. So we can have less food. Anthony, anything that you can think of you classify as a spiritual discipline you could do more of or less of?
Yes, certainly. Again, the easy one, prayer. It can be so easy to get into a place where we just get lazy and we don't want to. There's other things too much to do in life to be able to pray, which obviously is only one way of connecting and communicating with God. But yeah, there are times in life where it's just like, oh, there's just other things that I prefer to do. I prefer to just entertain myself in other ways, and just being able to spend time in God's presence,
Which you love.
yeah,
It's a good day.
yeah,
Yeah.
But-
And how do you
but-
do
but-
that? Pray.
yeah, absolutely. But then the things of this world can want to sway us, and the nice things of life, and want to suck us in.
It's funny though that when you set aside that time
Yeah,
and you do pray, how joyful you feel
yeah,
after it.
yeah,
Especially if you get an answer,
yeah,
or you can sense
Yeah.
His presence.
yeah,
And I guess there's some hard slogs sometimes. Like Daniel had 3 weeks of waiting for an answer.
yeah.
He just kept getting up, looking out the window, going, "Hey, God,
It's awesome.
Jerusalem." Yeah. So yeah. Okay, so keep them coming. Other things you might classify as spiritual disciplines. Anything to do with speaking? How does that go down?
Yeah, well, silence definitely is. The Bible certainly talks about there can be power in words, and they can be used in ways that I guess aren't really helpful. We can gossip, we can just try to get what we want in life by using words. So sometimes just to be quiet can bring up a sense of humility almost. But some people just they want to dominate all conversations. It can be, look at me, I'm important, my needs are important. They might not even realise that. And yet, for me, there is something of somewhat of it may not always be the case, and it may not be the motive, but certainly a humility in not demanding everyone's attention and having to express myself.
And what a power if you can control your tongue.
Yeah.
What does it say? That's one that says be quick to listen and slow to speak.
And the one that can control their tongue can control the city. And the one that doesn't control the tongue can set up a hellfire going. I can't remember exactly, but the tongue is just a phenomenal thing. And who speaks a lot probably is going to sin a lot. Yeah, okay, so we're starting to knock these off. We've got fasting, we've got praying, we've got silence and solitude. Any other things that come to mind when we're thinking about what might be classified as spiritual disciplines?
think a big one for me is the sense of Sabbath or rest. So I remember someone once said to me that one of the most spiritual things that you can do is just rest, even just a physical sense of having a sleep, because we think often that's just lazy. You're not getting anything done, and yet resting your body is actually quite a healthy thing. God created us to need rest, just like we need food, a lot of things that we need. For whatever reason, our body needs to actually be able to rest, or it won't function probably as it really could or should.
It's also an act of faith, isn't it? Like, I think at the end of the day, that was the big problem the Israelites had, was that working 7 days, you get more done, you get more wealthy. Don't we all want to be more wealthy? You know, I mean, it came down to, you know, really at the end of the day, it's do I trust God or do I love money? And it says, you can't serve God and money, you can love one and hate the other. And I think taking time out, even in this society, to say I'm going to set aside this time to be quiet, rejuvenate, and believe that God will provide the amount that I need. It's a step of faith to have a proper Sabbath and to maintain that.
Yeah, like for me, one of my favourite scriptures is where it says, "Be still and know that I'm God." I think for me, personally, when we're inundated with so many voices in the world, to be able to come to that place of stillness and just have God's voice, it's hard to do that when you're not resting, almost in a physical sense of being still, and being able to reflect and just think of God. There's so many voices in this world that want to demand that they be heard.
Yep. Yeah. I'm also thinking of generosity, the gift of generosity, or the discipline of generosity. I guess we do it out of cheerfulness, but staying cheerful, the discipline of staying cheerful, so we can keep being generous. Would be another one on my list. We haven't mentioned scripture reading, but that would be another obvious one. You know, just regular time of the Word. Yeah. Okay, so let's just all right. Can we just go back on something there? You're saying,
Sure. The generosity. I think that is a big one, because generosity can kind of conquer some fears that we have. If we just want to hold on to all our money and we just want to be wealthy, being generous does something to our heart that's really powerful. That breaks the hold that materialism or whatever it may be that we want to hold on to and accumulate does something to our heart, I think. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a big step of faith again.
Yeah,
to be
it
able
is.
to say, you know, I'm not relying on money.
Yeah.
I'm not relying on my talents, my strengths. I think that the act of giving is a crystallisation of that truth, to say, you know what, it's not my job, it's not my skills, it's not my talents, God is my provider, and I'm going to take this money and I'm going to give it to God. And then on the flip side, there's one which is an act of faith, that I know God looks after me, you know, give us this day our daily bread. And then also too, that joy in giving. I mean, your kingdom come, your will be done. We have an opportunity to give, and let's face it, that's not a characteristic of this world.
Yeah.
And so when you give, you are bringing light in a place of darkness.
Yeah.
And I think that there's something in it for us, and there's something in it for the world as well.
I was thinking of the flip side of giving, which is not getting back. So sometimes we get ripped off, and I've been ripped off by some pretty unscrupulous white goods people, mechanics, a whole list of people coming to mind right now. And you know, there's that. Oh, you know, I'd love to just stick it in and get that money back, but you know, Jesus says, don't go after the guy that takes from you. You know, steals your plate. Let him have it. And that's a discipline, because it's not natural. It's a spirit. You have to be spiritual when you get ripped to not go and get it back. It's just another discipline.
And Romans 12, again, it's a faith thing. It is do not take revenge, for it is mine to avenge, says the Lord. So you got that faith step of, right, I could go get that money because I've lost money and I'm weighing up the balance, and on a human level I'm done over. Or God sees it, I'm not going to take revenge because He said that He will, whether it's in this life or the life to come. And then when you think that person's going to get judged, okay, I don't really want that to happen, then that can bring out prayer.
Okay. Look, I'm thinking it's very easy for us to turn this into a long list that we all get very depressed about at the end of the day and go, wow, I thought it was going okay until I visited the change rooms this week. And so, I mean, Jono had some things to say about on the website teaching, which was a great teaching. If you go to Jesus Collective number 16 on the website, you'll pick up the teaching there on Get Disciplined. But some of the things you were talking about were just keep going, just persevere. And just over and over again, you fail, you get up, you do it again, over and over again. You're going to start and get a discipline happening, and then you'll start reaping a habit, and then you'll start reaping a character, and then you'll start reaping a destiny. And this ramping up of discipline and how it can actually go from sort of duty to desire and to delight. Has that been something that you've noticed in your own world in any way? Like the fact that once you've started and hung in there, that you've actually, this initial discipline phase has become less of a problem. Cal?
I think I have noticed that. Usually it's been in conjunction with that, having some godly friends, like where something's been started, whether it was physical training up there with some of the guys, or whether it was joining a home group where I was flat out all week, and then turning up to the house with my Macca's bag in hand and munching down a burger while home group was starting, and knowing that I probably at the start I was like, oh, I'm tired, I want to go home, but I made a certain commitment. So I got there, and once I got there, then fellowshipping with others, sharing the word, praying, mate, God just uses that. He uses the means of grace.
Okay.
And I think so. There was a discipline, I guess, of saying I need fellowship. The Bible talks about it. Do not forsake the gathering together of His people. So I went, well, okay, whether it's there or whether it was a coffee with a mate or whatever, I was always going to make sure I'm getting that regular contact with people, which is a means of grace for God into my life. And even if I didn't feel like it at the time, that I always felt better for it afterwards.
Right, so if we're talking about trying to get going with discipline, book some time with your brothers and sisters in Christ.
Yeah.
Okay. Anthony, any thoughts on getting discipline?
Yeah, well, as Carl was saying, I guess the idea of physical fitness. So, I guess over the years, there have been times when I've gone on and off to the gym, and when I usually haven't been for a while, it takes a bit of discipline. I've really got to psych myself up to get there. It's not the most natural thing that I want to do. Once I get there and start to get the habit, I do it regularly, and I look forward to going. And it actually, it doesn't become a discipline over time. But the thing I like about disciplines is that they don't really just fix up one little area of life. Because for me, going to the gym regularly, part of it is, okay, well, you don't want to be totally lazy in life, so one part of it is I'm going to try to stay physically fit, but it's trying to counter that sense of general laziness in life,
So
if that makes sense.
So spillover effect into other areas of your life.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the disciplines probably hit some more core things in our life rather than just fix up that thing that we might think that we're doing it for.
So we can look at our failings of discipline and just the ones that we keep failing for. You might be saying, well, look, try starting one that you can do, and as you get going on that and succeeding at it, might spill over and help you in the area you're failing.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
And the more you persevere,
yeah.
I'm just thinking like people who try to give up smoking, the ones that succeed are not the ones that fail once and stop, or after a couple of times they stop. It's shown that the more times you actually try and fail, you're the one that's going to succeed.
Yeah.
So there might be something in that for some people watching now. That
well, the big question is, how much do you want whatever it is?
yes.
How much do you want it? If you don't really want it all that much, maybe a little bit, then you probably might not last that long.
Yeah.
If you really want it,
Okay.
I think it's a good question to ask yourself.
What do I want?
What do I want, and how much do I want it?
And how would you know what you want? I guess you pull your calendar out and have a look at it.
Sure.
And so how many of those things on there require any spiritual disciplines?
Yeah.
And if none of them do, then I guess spiritual disciplines are getting in the way of our calendar. But if we book up some spiritual activity, that means serving God in some way around the local church, or visiting friends and people, and sharing the gospel, and all the things that we are commanded by Jesus to do. And if we book them in, even if we're not feeling that great, we book them in, and that's a draw card for me to just start getting discipline. If I'm going to see my Greek teacher for my studies, and it's there on the calendar, it's a constant pull. I'm going to go and do some biblical work now.
Yeah, it's always. I think that those time triggers or meetings with people or accountability, they are opportunities for God. And it's not even necessarily with people. It might be just a decision to pray, or a decision to worship, or a decision to give. I know, for example, for me, I have a relatively habitual giving routine, and I think that each time, you make the decision initially, and it might be by rote, but then as you go to give, then you think about it, and it starts you thinking about giving in the kingdom of God, and then it's an opportunity for God to move in you. Of course, it could also be an opportunity for building your own self-righteousness, because you could give for years and years and years, and then be telling yourself that I've got a level of righteousness because I've given for years. Or you could realise, actually, none of it's mine anyway, it's all God's, and you can move into that place of faith. So I don't think that it's if we don't do anything, we certainly don't enjoy the benefit of godliness, and it's not an opportunity for God to work in us. Even then, though, we can do it out of religion. We've got to do stuff, but we don't also become religious in the doing as well.
It'd be great to recognise that God is inside of us, and God is doing work through us, and that we're doing work with God rather than for God. It's a sense of like we're both in the yoke. When anything godly comes through and when anything discipline happens for us, then in some way or other God's helping us to do that. Because I know, left to my own devices, without God, I'm a pretty undisciplined sort of character. I'd hate to think of going back to where I was before God, because I was on a fairly negative trajectory, and that was 20 years ago, and I would think now I'd be just, it'd be awful. It'd be absolutely awful. So is it a blessed life to lead a disciplined life, or are we better off not leading a spiritually disciplined life? Do you think there's any value in it now, in the here and now, or is it just for the then and there?
No, I for me, the discipline in life allows us to live the best life that we can possibly live. The life that Jesus said that we can live, where our hearts are right and our motives in life can be good and right, if that makes sense. So
Peace.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we engage with the disciplines, we find that our thinking changes and our hearts change in a lot of ways. We realise that in doing the things that we don't necessarily want to do, we realise that there's a bigger thing than ourselves. If it's all about us, we can do whatever we want, whenever we want, and we can be king. But when you actually, I think, have to work hard at something, even though it's not comfortable, it's not convenient, it's not easy, then it really does something within us. In some ways, it puts us in the right perspective with God.
You get that peace back.
Yeah.
And I think, look, I'd probably add to that the parable of the prodigal son is about us having faith that if you go down that route where you do whatever you want, you take your inheritance, you spend up, it's actually, you end up in the pig's wheel. We all know that. And when you get there, the thought you're going to have is, even the servants had it better in my father's house. And I think that there's joy and there's beauty in living for God. So, look, sure, you can chase after money and power and sex, the three, or the girls, the gold, the glory, or what does it say, the world, the flesh and the devil. You can chase after all those things. But as Ecclesiastes would say, there's not ultimate satisfaction in them. It's like drinking salt water, it wets your tongue, but then you're more thirsty after it. So I think the answer is there is goodness in following God, and that there's a deeper sense of joy. It's like eating a steak as opposed to eating fairy floss, because one, you feel satisfied afterwards and you feel built up. The other one, it just tickles the tongue and you come away going, oh, you don't feel satisfied. I think that's what we're talking about with godliness.
Yeah, so I think it's probably a good time to just remind ourselves that Jono certainly made the big point that God is not against effort for salvation. He's against earning for salvation. And that's just a huge thing. We've been talking really freely about, we've got these disciplines to do and these things to happen, but at the end of the day, none of these disciplines are ever going to get us salvation, as if it's ever going to happen. I mean, our sin debt is absolutely colossal, and all this work is filthy rags. But there is a motive there for doing these spiritual disciplines. I mean, I think of what it's going to be like when I see him face to face, and I don't know about you guys, but I would love to him to put his arms out rather than have his arms folded. Like, yeah, come on in, Nick, but wow, we'll have a chat in a minute. Yeah, good, okay, but we'll talk. I don't want that. I want to see my Jesus open arms and say, "Come on, son, give us a hug." I really do want that. I know he's so gracious that he'll save me. I know that because I have faith in him and I have trust in him. I owe him my life. I believe in my heart. I confess with my mouth. But I love him. I want him to be, raucously proud and happy of his kids, of his brothers, sisters, and I want to be one of them. And so there's a joy that's at the end of this row of discipline that keeps me sort of moving forward, a reward, if you like. I think there's more than that myself. I think there's also heavenly rewards in whatever that looks like, however that is. Can't understand. It's gold, it's silver, it's precious stones. It's not straw, hay and stubble, which is going to get burned up. So do you think has that impacted you guys at all? Do you think that helps you with discipline, to think about the joy beyond this life and beyond the suffering we go through?
Well, I think for me, I would tend to look more at the benefit in the here and now. And because I think for me, my faith in God, I don't want it to be just something that just like I'm going to heaven, glad for that, and I just enjoy this life. No, my faith actually means something to me where I want to make a difference for God now. I want to be able to help spread the kingdom. I want to bring heaven to earth here now. It's not just, thank you God, I believe in you, I'm going to go to heaven one day. And to live the life of a disciple, I guess there's no coincidence that disciple and discipline are from the same root words, no doubt.
So you're raucously grateful and you're starting now.
Yeah, and thy kingdom, how is thy kingdom going to come if it doesn't come to us? If the salt loses the saltiness, what good is it? And I think, for me, I just had a little picture as I was just thinking about, when a parent, when they're embarrassed about their child when they're in a shopping centre because it's jumping up and down and screaming and yelling its head off, and you see that child, you're like, what kind of parent are they like? Wow, that kid needs some discipline. That's what I'm talking about. God does discipline his children and for their certain good, and I don't want to be that kid. I want to be the kid that, and let's face it, that's a disobedient child that God has to continue bringing in line and probably give some discipline to on the spot. And I think there's a psalm that says, do not be, I don't want to control you like a horse with bit and bridle. He wants to direct us in a way that's not like that, where he has to drag us to and fro. It'd be good if, it gets similar to what you're saying, Nick, except probably more in the here and now. But I want him to be proud of me. And I can think of times where I've done things that he would be proud of, and I can think of things that I'm really not proud of.
That's great, and I think we need a combination of both here and now motive and then and there motive as well. There are certainly times in our lives that we've all had where the here and now has been pretty ordinary, even in God. We've been, like wretched times, oppressed times, difficult times, where sometimes all we can think of that's any good is is the then and there,
Yeah.
and being with Him. It's better to be
Yeah.
with you, Lord, than down here.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's good. You know, disciplines can help us in both these regards. All right. Well, it's probably time to start thinking about wrapping up. Is there anything in particular you'd like to share about discipline that you might not have already said? But if not, we can just move in towards some prayer and ministry time. Cal, is there anything in particular?
I think that I'd like to say that, you know, I think discipline gets a bad rap in our modern society. It's like, do what you feel, enjoy your life, live it up, live it to the max now, get everything out of it. And doing that is really sucking the juice out of life. Whereas I think that it's ironic that you'll go to a country that's third world and there's no road rules and there's power lines everywhere and nothing is ordered and under control. And we go there and go, oh, look at this place, it's a mess, get me back to Australia. Oh, right, where there's rules about how things happen. And then we can travel past cars that come in the opposite direction at 100 k's and you got your Bluetooth on and you're not worried because everyone follows the rules and it's for the benefit of everyone. And I think that we can run around relationally and do whatever we want. That's where the carnage happens. And I think that there's it's like the same power that drives a nuclear power plant is the same power that flattens a city. And Japan, you know, a nuclear powered nation, has had 2 cities wiped out by the very same power. One is used for great evil and one's used for great good. And I just think discipline is something that can take the power of money or the power of sex or the power of the gifts you've been given, which can be used for pride or glorification of God and the benefit of others. He can take those powers and if they're controlled in a godly way to bring about great good, if you want to go, oh, I don't need God, I don't need self-control, I don't need self-discipline, I think it can be used for great evil. And I just encourage those Christians, as a Christian, you have the power for great good. Don't let your life be used by the devil for great evil.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Any final thoughts on discipline, or we're going to go into a time of ministry?
Yeah, well, I certainly think I look up to Jesus as the model of discipline. Even Jesus himself had to be disciplined, and I can't really go past the fact that disciple discipline, that is the life that we are called to be. I mean, of course, it's our choice as to whether we're going to do that, but Jesus was the ultimate in not only talking about things but acting it out and having that relationship with his Father. So as much as, and I agree with Cal that discipline gets a bad rap. When I first knew this topic was on discipline, you think about that word from a young age, I probably associated that with punishment. Probably had it wrong what discipline's actually about. Discipline is about, in a sense, helping us balance out the areas that aren't good, chipping away the parts of our life that aren't helpful and good, and correcting us so that we come into realization of some truths. For instance, if we, as a child, if we behave, yeah, absolutely,
We're developing.
yeah, like discipline when you're a child, you obviously won't like it, but the truth will be, maybe say from a father, that if you grow up and you keep just doing what you want, life won't work out well for you if you just think you can always do what you want. And so there's that sense of discipline really is bringing about a sense of balance to life, and looking at some of the areas in life that aren't working and helpful for us, either in our connection with God, getting a sense of peace in life, living the kingdom life, and but either way you look at it, discipline is not easy.
No.
It's not a convenient thing. I don't think it's meant to be comfortable.
Yeah.
I think it's actually meant to be difficult, where it forces us to kind of change and gets us out of that comfortable place.
Okay, that's good thoughts. Yeah, my wife always reminds me it's better to discipline yourself and wait for God to do it for you.
It's good. It's good.
There's a little, thought for timing on discipline. If we can get involved with self-discipline, then we may not be disciplined by external punishment.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, both of those are in a sense loving. I mean, if I discipline myself, I'm showing love to myself.
Yes.
Because if a father disciplines his son, I mean, that's his love to his son.
Yeah.
And if I'm disciplining myself, I guess I'm showing myself a bit of love. Aren't I?
Yeah.
As long as it's directed towards God.
Yeah.
And not, sorry, yeah.
Well, a lot of minor corrections are better than one big painful correction.
All right, well, we better wrap up. So I just want to say, is there anything in particular you'd like to address to the Jesus Collective? There may be someone in the Jesus Collective that you want to speak directly to, or a group of people, regarding anything regarding discipline. Cal.
Yeah, look, as I was thinking about this topic, and I've learnt the easy way at times and the hard way at times as well. I was thinking about fire and in the fireplace, and who would want fire in their house except in the fireplace? Because when it's anywhere else in their house is burned down. And it's along the lines of that whole other analogy of having things in their place. And God is a good God, and He wants you to be able to harness the things that He has given you for the good in your life. And so when we're talking about money, when we're talking about sex, when we're talking about your vocation, I think I'm particularly thinking of guys right now. You need to think about what place these things have in your life, and that God calls you to have them in certain places for your own good, so that they become constructive in your life rather than destructive. And I would encourage you to have faith in God for that, and continue to search the Word as to how self-discipline can benefit your life.
Yeah, I want to put a bit of a challenge out there. And my challenge will be to ask yourself, what kind of a life do you want to live? What do you want life to look like? Do you want it to be the good life that God has for us? Do you want that to be one that's full of wisdom? Because we have the choice as to whether we want to be disciplined or not. If you just want a life that is just average, you don't really have goals. My question, do you have goals in life? Are you willing to? Because I think if you have goals in life, you're much more willing to work towards it. But my challenge would be to ask yourself, what are my goals in life? What does the good life look like? Do I want it? That's a simple start of reflecting on your own life. It's something that I have to do in my own life. Everyone has to ask themselves that same question.
I think I've got just a few general thoughts running through at the moment. Get started. Start small. Keep going. Don't stop. If you're failing in one area of discipline, shift. Pick another. Go for it. Don't stop. You can start overcoming in that area. It may spill over into the area you're struggling with. Don't stop. You're not alone in this area. God has grace for you. He's measured out His grace. He loves it in His heart that you are having a crack at this.
Yeah.
You know, the righteous man falls over 7 times, but he gets back up again. And God's heart is that you will succeed, and He is there to help you and get in the yoke with you and be with you and push with you. Don't stop. So our heart from the Jesus Collective from the panel to the Jesus Collective is, keep going and get disciplined. See you next week.